My wife secretly tried to sell our family home for $500, $0 to pay off her debts, and now she's threatening to sue me for half the property after I found out she's been cheating on me with my brother. I'm drowning in betrayal and legal chaos. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am, trying to make sense of a mess I never saw coming. It all started when I found out my wife, Lisa, had been trying to sell our family home behind my back for $500,000. That alone was shocking enough. She was desperate to pay off her debts, she said, but what really knocked me flat was the fact that she'd been cheating on me with my own brother, Mark. Yeah, you heard that right, my brother. I still can't wrap my head around how everything fell apart so fast. We had a decent life. Not perfect, but stable. I work in finance and Lisa stayed home, taking care of our two kids, Emma and Jake. We'd been married for 10 years and honestly I thought I knew her. She was always a bit bitchy, a little manipulative at times, but I chalked it up to her being stressed or just her personality. Still, she always seemed to care about the family and us. That's why I never suspected anything was wrong, until I started noticing small things. First, she became oddly secretive about her phone. She'd take calls in the bathroom or lock her screen whenever I got near. Then, she started missing her usual Saturday brunch with her friends, claiming she was busy or had a headache. I didn't think much of it at first, but then I saw her deleting texts and hiding receipts from a furniture store. I thought maybe she was redecorating or planning a surprise for me, but deep down I knew something was off. One night I caught her in a lie about where she was going. She said she was meeting her friend Corinne, but I saw her leaving a hotel downtown. I followed her, feeling like a paranoid fool, but what I saw changed everything. She was with Mark. They weren't just talking. She was straddling him on the hotel bed, and from what I overheard, they were having sex. It was like my world shattered in that instant. My stomach dropped, and I froze outside the window watching them. I couldn't believe it. That was the moment I realized my wife had been lying to me for months, maybe longer. The worst part, I wasn't even angry at her at first, just numb. How could she do this to me, to our family? And then I remembered the money, the house. She had been going behind my back about the sale. I found out she'd been secretly negotiating with some real estate agents, trying to sell our home to pay off her debts. She was planning to do it all without telling me, and she had the nerve to lie about her whereabouts, her affairs, everything. I confronted her the next morning. I was furious. My voice was trembling, but I kept my composure. I told her I knew what she'd been doing, that I saw her with Mark. She everything at first, calling me paranoid, saying I was imagining things, that I was overreacting. But I had proof, screenshots of her texts, hotel receipts, and the fact that her phone had been synced with her email, revealing the entire affair. She's a master manipulator, always lying, twisting stories, trying to turn everything around on me. She kept insisting she loved me, that it was just a mistake, that Mark meant nothing. But I knew better. That day I felt like I was drowning. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt even more was the realization that she'd been planning to sell our home, our safe place, for her own selfish needs. She had no regard for the vows we took, for the life we built. All those years I thought she was my partner, my wife, the person I could trust with everything. Turns out she was just a stranger hiding behind a facade, sneaking around behind my back, betraying me with my own brother. I didn't sleep that night. I was angry, crushed, and overwhelmed by 1,000 different emotions. How could she do this? How could she lie, cheat, and then threaten to take half the house I worked so hard for? I kept replaying everything in my head, trying to find some reason, some justification for her actions, but there was none. Just betrayal, pure, unfiltered betrayal. And I knew I had to do something about it. I couldn't just let her get away with this. I had to protect what was mine. The next few days felt like walking through a nightmare. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her with Mark, her lying to my face, the house I thought was ours suddenly feeling like a prison. I started digging through her things, trying to find more proof, more reasons to understand how she could do this. That's when I found the emails, dozens of them, exchanged between her and Mark. They weren't just casual, they were filled with explicit talk, plans for secret meetups, promises of more than just sex. I couldn't believe my eyes. I'd always suspected Mark was a little too close to her, but I never imagined it was like this. It hit me like a punch to the gut. She'd been lying about her debts, about her need for money. She'd been desperate enough to sell our home, our family's future, just to cover her own ass. That explained her secretive behavior, her sudden interest in refinancing or selling the house. She saw an opportunity and took it, not caring how it would crush me or destroy everything we built. The thought that she'd put herself before the family, before our kids, just made me furious. I knew I couldn't confront her again without a plan. Not just a confrontation, but a strategic move. I needed leverage, proof, and most of all, a way to make her understand I wasn't going to be manipulated or played. I decided to hire a private investigator. I wanted to catch her in the act if she tried to lie her way out again. I also started digging into her financials, bank statements, recent transactions, anything that could prove her intentions to sell the house. It was a lot to process, but I was determined. Meanwhile, Lisa was acting even more bitchy and defensive. Every time I brought up her odd behavior, she'd turn on the tears or get angry, accusing me of mistrusting her. She'd say I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that I was overreacting. But I was. I had enough evidence now to see she was planning something big. I could feel it. What made it worse was the way she lied with such ease, like she thought she could just spin her way out of it. One night, I caught her in a lie about where she was going. She said she was visiting her mother, but I knew better. I followed her again, this time to a different hotel. I saw her slip inside with a guy I didn't recognize. My stomach sank. I took pictures. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about her cheating on me. It was about her betraying everything we stood for. Our marriage, our family, our future, all of it was on the line. I felt sick, furious, and betrayed all at once. The legal side of things started to become clear too. I found out she'd been talking to a lawyer, probably to figure out how to get half the house once she decided to sell it. She was planning her escape, her way out, and I was left in the dark. I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her get away with this, not after everything. I started gathering all the evidence, saving screenshots, recording her calls when I could, and making sure I had a paper trail. The most shocking part, she still everything when I confronted her again. She called me crazy, said I was imagining things, that I was paranoid and jealous. She accused me of snooping and trying to ruin her life, but I had enough. I told her I knew about her affair, her plans to sell the house, and her lies. I told her I wasn't going to let her take everything without a fight. That was the turning point. The look in her eyes was pure hatred. She knew I was onto her and she didn't like it. This whole thing feels like it's spinning out of control, and honestly, I don't know what's going to happen next. I just know I can't trust her anymore. The betrayal runs too deep. I've been trying to piece everything together, but every day feels like another punch in the gut. The house, the money, the affair, all of it colliding into this chaos I never expected to face. I keep asking myself if I should fight for the marriage or cut my losses and move on. Right now, I feel like I'm in the middle of a legal and emotional storm, and I don't see the end. The days that followed were a blur. I spent countless hours on the phone with lawyers, trying to understand my rights and what I could do to protect myself and the house. Lisa was still insisting she was innocent, that she had no plans to sell the home without my approval, and that I was just being paranoid. But her words sounded hollow now. I'd seen her texts, her emails, her hotel receipts. She was lying, and she knew it. I could tell by the way she avoided eye contact, by the way she snapped at me when I pressed her about her whereabouts. I decided I needed to act quickly. I couldn't let her keep weaving her lies. I hired a private investigator, someone to keep tabs on her and gather concrete evidence. I needed proof that she was actively planning to sell the house, or at the very least, to solidify my case if it ever came to a legal battle. The pie followed her for a few days, and what he turned up made my stomach turn even more. Lisa was meeting with a real estate agent, someone she hadn't told me about, and discussing the sale of the house. The agent confirmed she'd been pushing for a quick sale, all while denying she was doing anything behind my back. At this point, I was furious. Not just betrayed, but also feeling like I'd been played for a fool for years. I'd given her everything, my time, my trust, my hard-earned money, and she'd been secretly planning to walk away with half the house, the money, and whatever else she could squeeze out of me. It was clear she was more interested in money and her own escape plan than in fixing our marriage. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. The confrontation came sooner than I expected. One night I sat her down and laid all my cards on the table. I showed her the emails, the hotel receipts, the pictures from the hotel, and the evidence from the pie. I told her I knew about her affair with Mark, about her plans to sell the house, and her lies to my face. Her reaction was a mix of anger and denial. She screamed at me, called me paranoid, accused me of spying on her, and then flipped the script, saying I was the one cheating on her all along, that I'd been hiding something. I was stunned. I couldn't believe how she turned it around so quickly. The woman who'd been cheating on me with my brother was now accusing me of the same. I told her she was full of shit, that her lies were obvious, and that I had enough evidence to take her to court. She just sneered, told me I was a control freak, and stormed out of the room. That was the moment I realized she was willing to burn everything down just to save herself. She didn't care about the family, about the vows, about the house. She only cared about her own skin. What followed was a storm of legal threats and accusations. She threatened to sue me for half the property, claiming she had contributed equally to the house's value, and that I was trying to cheat her out of her rightful share. I was stunned by her audacity. She had been planning this all along, trying to hide her affair, sell the house, and then turn around and play the victim. I knew I had to protect myself. I started gathering every document, every piece of proof I had, and prepared for what I knew would be a long fight. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude became even more bitchy and manipulative. She'd lash out at me for every little thing, accuse me of trying to control her, and throw around false accusations about my fidelity. She was trying to make me doubt myself, to make me look like the villain so she could spin her story to the lawyers and the courts. But I wasn't falling for it. I knew her game. I knew she was desperate, cornered, and willing to do anything to save herself. The emotional toll was enormous. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry. I'd always believed in honesty and loyalty, and now I saw how fragile that trust really was. Every day I questioned everything, my judgment, my decisions, my own feelings. I wondered if I'd missed the signs, if I should have seen it coming. But deep down, I knew I wasn't the one at fault here. She was the one who betrayed us all. The house, my family, everything I worked for was on the line, and I had to fight tooth and nail to keep what was mine. All I could do now was brace myself for what's to come and hope I can come out of this mess still standing. The legal battle was no joke. I spent sleepless nights poring over contracts, consulting with lawyers, and trying to figure out how to protect what little stability I had left. Lisa kept up her act, acting innocent one moment, then viciously accusing me of all sorts of things the next. She'd call me a controlling asshole, say I was trying to ruin her, and that I had no right to question her. Honestly, it was exhausting. The woman was a master at manipulation, twisting every fact to serve her narrative. Meanwhile, I was gathering more evidence. I hired a forensic accountant to go through her bank statements, looking for any suspicious transactions. Turns out she'd been withdrawing money, large sums, under the table for months, probably to fund her secret plans. I found transfers to an offshore account she'd set up without my knowledge, which she'd been using to hide her debts and her secret sales. That was a blow. She'd been lying about being broke, about needing money for emergencies. She'd been planning her escape for a long time. I also discovered she'd been sneaking around with Mark even more than I initially thought. The private investigator caught her meeting him in a hotel again, this time more than once. And the kicker, she'd been telling her friends. She was stressed, that she needed a break, but behind my back she was having sex with my brother. The betrayal was almost too much to process. I kept asking myself, how did everything get so warped? How did the woman I loved turn into this manipulative, dishonest person? At the same time, her legal threats escalated. She hired her own lawyer and filed a motion claiming she was entitled to half the house because she'd contributed financially, despite the fact that I'd paid the mortgage, the property taxes, and taken care of most of the household expenses. She argued she had a right to sell the house and keep her share, even though I had proof she was planning to sell it secretly. I knew I had to fight back hard, or she'd walk away with everything. I decided to file for a legal separation first. I wanted to freeze things, stop her from selling the house or transferring any assets without my say-so. It was a messy process, lots of court dates, hearings, and back-and forths. During one hearing, Lisa sat there with her bitchy smirk, trying to act like the victim, claiming I was trying to control her and that she deserved her fair share. I couldn't believe she was trying to spin this into a story of innocence. The court saw through her lies, but it was clear she was willing to lie, cheat, and manipulate her way through this entire nightmare. What made this even harder was the emotional toll. I felt like I was losing my mind at times. Every day was a new shock. The woman I married, the woman I thought I knew, was now this scheming, lying stranger. I'd catch myself wondering if I'd missed the signs all along, that maybe I was blind, too trusting. But then I remembered all the times she lied, all the times she dismissed my concerns, and I knew I wasn't the one at fault. She was the one who had betrayed everything we stood for. The hardest part was seeing the pain in my kids' eyes. Emma and Jake didn't understand what was happening. They just knew their mom and dad weren't acting like a family anymore. I tried to shield them from the worst of it, but I couldn't hide the tension, the fighting, the tears. I kept telling myself I had to stay strong for them. If not for myself, I couldn't let her destroy everything we'd built. I had to fight, not just legally but emotionally, to hold onto a shred of sanity and stability. Looking back now, I realize that betrayal runs deep. It's not just about the money or the house. It's about the trust you think you have in someone you love. Lisa played me for a fool, and I'm still trying to pick up the pieces. Every day I ask myself if I'll ever trust again, if I'll ever believe in love or loyalty the same way. All I know is I refuse to let her win this, no matter how much she lies, manipulates, or tries to tear me down. I've got evidence, I've got the law on my side, and I'm determined to see this through. The months dragged on, and the legal battle took over every waking moment. I felt like I was fighting a war I couldn't see the end of, with Lisa doing everything she could to drag me down. She kept up her bitchy, manipulative act, throwing tantrums in court, trying to sway the judge with tears and false accusations. She'd scream about how I was trying to control her, how I was an abuser, how she deserved her share simply because she was my wife. But I had the evidence, and I knew I had the truth on my side. Still, it didn't make the emotional toll any easier. I remember sitting in the courtroom during one hearing, watching her glare at me with pure hatred. She had hired a high-powered lawyer, and they were trying to spin this whole thing as a marriage gone bad, a woman desperate to escape her debts, and a brother who was just a pawn in her game. I could see through all of it. Her lawyer kept pushing the narrative that she was entitled to half the house because she had contributed equally, even though I had been paying the mortgage, the bills, and supporting the family. The lies she told, the manipulations. She was trying to turn everyone against me, but I refused to back down. Meanwhile, I'd been working behind the scenes to secure my position. I had my accountant finish a detailed report on the house's value, showing I was the primary contributor financially. I had the private investigators' reports, the hotel receipts, the emails, all laid out to prove her plans to sell the house secretly, to cheat me out of my inheritance, and to run off with her lover, Mark. I was determined to fight for everything that was rightfully mine. But it wasn't just the legal fight that was tearing me apart. Inside, I was shattered. Every day I wrestled with feelings of betrayal, anger, and sadness. I'd ask myself over and over, how did I miss all the signs? Was I so blind to her bitchy side that I ignored the warnings? Or had she been hiding who she truly was all along? The woman I married, the woman I loved, was now just a stranger who'd lied, cheated, and schemed behind my back. It's a bitter pill to swallow, and some nights I'd lie awake wondering if I'd ever truly recover from this. And then there were the kids. Emma and Jake kept asking questions, sensing something was wrong but not understanding exactly what. I tried to shield them, but I knew they felt the tension. They'd see their mother yell at me or storm out of the house, and I could see the confusion and fear in their eyes. It broke my heart. I told myself I had to be strong for them, for myself. I kept reminding myself that I was fighting not just for the house or money, but for their stability and future. I couldn't let her destroy everything we'd built, even if she was doing her best to tear us apart. As the court proceedings continued, Lisa's attitude became even more bitter. She accused me of being a bad husband, claimed I was trying to control her life, even accused me of cheating, something I'd never even come close to doing. I knew she was just trying to distract from her own lies and betrayals. I stayed focused, presenting my evidence and waiting for the day I could finally put an end to this chaos. But deep down, I knew the scars would linger. Trust, once broken this badly, doesn't just heal overnight. The most painful realization came when I understood that her manipulations weren't going to stop. She lied, cheated, and schemed for so long that I wondered if I'd ever see the truth again. But I also knew I had to move forward, whatever that meant. I couldn't keep living in this chaos, in this emotional prison she'd created. I started making plans, thinking about how to rebuild my life, how to protect my kids from the fallout, and how to finally put this nightmare behind me. One thing I learned through all of this: betrayal cuts so deep that it can shatter your faith in everything. But it also teaches you resilience. I may have been, but I'm not beaten. I'm determined to get through this, to reclaim my life, and to ensure my kids grow up knowing their father fought for what was right. The house, the money, the lies, none of it defines me. I just want peace again, and I know I'll have to fight for it. The question is, how much more pain am I willing to endure before I finally find my way back? The final court date came sooner than I expected, and it was the culmination of everything: the lies, the betrayals, the months of legal hell. Sitting there in the courtroom, I felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and relief. I knew I had done everything I could to prove my case, to protect what was mine, and to expose her manipulations. Lisa sat across from me, her bitchy smirk gone now, replaced with a cold, calculating stare. She thought she had won, that she'd somehow managed to spin her web of lies into a victory. But the truth was on my side, and I was ready to fight for it. The judge listened carefully as my lawyer presented the evidence: proof of her plans to sell the house secretly, the emails with Mark, the bank transactions, and the testimony from the private investigator. Lisa's lawyer tried to argue that she deserved half because she'd contributed equally to the marriage, but the judge saw through her bullshit. My accountant's report, the proof of my mortgage payments, and the evidence of her secret dealings made it clear. She had been planning her escape for months, and she had no right to claim half of what I had built. When the judge finally ruled, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The court confirmed that Lisa had no legal claim to the house because she'd been caught scheming to sell it without my knowledge. She was ordered to pay back the money she'd taken from the offshore account, and her claim to any part of the property was dismissed. She looked furious, her bitchy attitude replaced with pure rage, but I didn't care. Justice, at least in that moment, had been served. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Lisa left the courtroom, her face twisted in anger, and I knew she was planning her next move. But I also knew I had won the battle, at least for now. I moved out of the house, took the kids, and started rebuilding my life from scratch. It wasn't easy. Trust had been shattered and the scars ran deep. But I was determined to create a new beginning, one built on honesty, integrity, and a fresh start. Looking back, I realize how much this experience has changed me. I learned that betrayal can come from the people you trust most, and it can leave you feeling broken. But I also learned that resilience matters. I survived, I fought for my family, and I refused to let her destroy everything I worked so hard for. The house might be gone, and my marriage might be over, but I still have my kids, my dignity, and a newfound strength I never knew I had. If there's one thing I'd tell anyone in a similar situation, it's this: don't ignore the signs. Trust your instincts, protect yourself legally, and don't be afraid to fight for what's right. People can surprise you, sometimes in the worst ways, but your worth isn't defined by their betrayals. Keep your head up, Stay honest with yourself and remember that eventually the truth comes out. And when it does, you'll find the strength to move forward, no matter how much it hurts in the moment.